Hi everyone. I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about some of the miracle stories that are happening right here in our own city, in our own state, every day. My name is Tony Kausha, and the title of our show is Tony's 50,000 Coincidence Miracles. Please note, this show is not about religion, and we're not trying to change anyone's religion, and we're not trying to get you to join any religion. It's just about miracle stories. I don't know of any religion on the planet that doesn't talk about miracles. That's why religions begin, because they have something that's telling them there's really a God. But we're not going to get into that. We're going to just talk about miracles and leave the decisions about all that up to you. So we don't care what religion you are. We just want to talk about miracles. If you are an atheist, I think you'll enjoy the program as well, although I can't guarantee you'll remain an atheist very long after you hear many convincing stories, coincidence kinds of stories about miracles. You can email me your own stories if you wish. We'll try to use all we can on the show. I can't guarantee we will, depending on volume and time, but you're welcome to send your stories on to us, and we will mention them when we can. You can send them to the following email address. But please notice that if we do use your story, we won't mention your name. We'll keep you anonymous. And we suggest that in your story, when you send it to us, don't use your correct name. That way anyone listening will not be able to figure out that it was you that sent the story in. The email address you can send your stories to is very easy to remember. It consists of 2 words and 3 numbers. The first word is Tony, spelled Tony, and the second word is and, spelled A-N-D, and the numbers are 777. So once again, the name is Tony and 777 at AOL.com. Well, let us begin. Our first sharing today is from a man who has found that praying, asking God for inspirations and wisdom before doing things produces coincidence miracles. The first item he tells us about is he was scanning his computer for malware or problems on the computer. So he's about to scan the computer, but he had a computer specialist scheduled to call in, and by remote from the computer specialist office, he was going to come in and check the performance of his computer as well. So he asked for wisdom if he had enough time to run the scan, because the scan could run, something like 15 or 20 minutes. And he got inspired, yes, run the scan, there'll be enough time. And he did it, and he was very impressed, because as soon as it finished to the second, the scanning was done to the second, and the phone rang, and it was the remote caller calling in to check the computer. So that's evidence of praying for wisdom and having it produce a coincidence miracle. And as I always say, if you think it's a miracle, whatever you think is a miracle, you think that God did it, then it's a miracle. So in his case, and it's further confirmed by his second coincidence miracle. He said he was out shopping about 3 days earlier, and he had his checkbook with him. And now it's 3 days later, and he was looking for his checkbook, couldn't find it. So he sat down, prayed for wisdom, asked for inspiration, and he relates to us that as soon as he said that, he had a picture in his mind and a thought in his mind to check a shopping bag, some things he had not put away yet. And he looked in there, and there's where his checkbook was. So again, if you think something's a miracle, it's a miracle. In his case, the computer perfect timing of the scan matching to the second the phone call he got. And now in this case, 3 days earlier, couldn't remember where he put his checkbook. And by praying, he gets inspiration immediately telling him, inspiring him to look in the shopping bag. As some of you know, I'm always asking people I meet, even new people that I meet, if they've had any miracles in their life. And I was really impressed with one woman I met recently. I asked her if she had any miracles in her life, and she instantaneously said to me, "Absolutely, I have a most wonderful miracle to share with you." And I said, "Please do." She said, "Well, I'm one of the members of a quadruplets, and there were 2 boys and 2 girls. And I was a little stunned thinking about it because I'm sorry to say, most of us think about triplets and twins as, common everyday occurrences. So I'm sorry I had that attitude, but she impressed me with the fact, what are the odds of having 2 boys and 2 girls? And she was one of them. What are the odds of her being one of this quadruplet group? And so she's been impacted by this her whole life. She just feels like she's a walking miracle. And I had another story from someone else I shared with you in the past. It was a priest, and he was part of triplets, and the other 2 babies that were born did not survive, and he was the only one who did survive. He had some medical conditions for many years, but he's doing fine now, and that's why he became a priest. He was so impacted that he was a miracle because he was one of the triplets who survived, that he decided he should be a priest. And he's a wonderful priest, and he does a really great job. But so we all need to get more impressed by when we hear about twins, quadruplets, twins, or triplets. We have to think about the reality is they really are miracle events. Our next coincidence miracle is from another person who has decided to say their rosary while they're driving to work every day. And on the first day they were doing that, they relate to us that they started to say the rosary. They were on an interstate highway, and a car with 3 5s passed them just as they started to say the rosary. And when they got off the interstate parkway, just before they were getting off, another car with 3 5s passed them at the same time. Certainly we can't deny that's a coincidence, 3 5s appearing as he started and 3 5s appearing as he ended. And those are the kinds of things that we call coincidence miracles, dual coincidence. And the number, by the way, the number 555 stands for the grace of God, the presence and grace of God. And when people say the Hail Mary, one of the things they say is, Hail Mary, full of grace meaning full of the presence of God. I met a husband and wife recently and asked them if they had any coincidence miracles they could tell me about. And they said, wow, we really have been a little stunned ourselves for the last 2 days because we both participate in unscrambling the words in the New York Times, where you unscramble some of the letters that they give us. And for the last 2 days, we hit it right on the head. And my husband, I just asked my husband for a word. It popped into his head, and he gave it to me. And then he related. He said on his side of the story, he started asking God to inspire him with words to suggest. And for the last 2 days, he has done that, and with great success. He asked God to inspire him with potential words, and he hit it right on the head twice in a row. I mean, that's really pretty amazing. A woman who had been listening to us and heard about my book and how my book stresses, keep asking God what to do, because he does send us inspirations and ideas during the day. And these inspirations and ideas is what produces coincidence miracles, because you ask God what to do, he inspires you what to do, and pretty regularly that becomes a coincidence miracle. She was listening in. She said, I've been doing this for years. She said, I greatly encourage and highly encourage you to promote your book. She said, I've been doing this for years. My mom and dad taught me to, before you do things, you need to think. But better than that, you should ask God for inspirations. She said she works in a cafeteria at a high school, and she's always impressed with, she asks God to inspire her about what to say during the day with the students, etc. And she always gets a lot of feedback from people like, wow, it's amazing you said that, or that was something I really needed to hear, etc., etc. So this was a real live person saying, look, I've been doing this for years. I highly encourage you to tell people about God and how he does give inspirations and ideas to us if we ask. Then I met 2 teenagers, and I asked them if they had any coincidence miracles to report, and they said they were very excited. They were sisters. They said they'd gone to a vacation with their father to Alaska. They were there for like a week, and they were hoping to see some orcas, some whales, and they're noted for being seen in the places where they were on vacation. And they hadn't seen any for 6 days. So it was the last day of their vacation, and so they decided to pray and ask God to send them 3 orcas. They asked specifically for 3, and I thought that was interesting. They did that, and they were so excited to tell me because they saw exactly 3 orcas pass by the boat right after they said their prayer. And to see teenagers experiencing this, that they can pray and ask God for things and receive answers and miracles, is so exciting because they have a whole life, many years to go, where they can tell other people about their miracle stories. Our next coincidence miracle is from someone who said they have not been to church for 10 years and decided to go back. And on the day they went back, while they were in church praying, they had their eyes closed and they experienced in their mind something like attending a fireworks display, and it captivated their attention. They really felt blessed by God that he was doing that because he was pleased that they came back to church. And then a little while after that, I don't know how long, but his wife also went back to church, and she said she experienced the same identical thing. She had her eyes closed, and she was praying, and she had the sensation she was at an elaborate fireworks display. Our next miracle story is from someone who tells us they survived the 9/11 disaster of the Twin Towers, and about 4 years later, when they were baptizing their 3rd son, they realized why God had spared them. In other words, they believed that God let him live so he could have a 3rd son. And at the baptism, he really experienced this blessing from God that he had survived the 9/11 because he was supposed to have another son. Our next story is from a man who enjoys piloting his sailboat at the ocean, and he relates a story to us of one day he decided to take his 3-year-old son out for a ride in the sailboat, and while he was out piloting the sailboat, it got filled with water. I don't know how that happened, but he didn't tell us. Apparently, I believe the waves probably were high enough to have that happen because of what he said next. So he said he pulled over to shore. He took his son out of the boat and put him on the shore, on the sand at the beach, and he got busy to start bailing out the water. And he said, I did one of the most stupidest things that I've ever done. I forgot to put a life jacket on my 3-year-old son. And worse than that, I was out of sight, away from him. I was on the other side of the boat. I was out in the water while he was up on the sand, but on the other side of the boat. In other words, he was at the front of the boat, and his son was at the back of the boat, up near the sand. And a large wave, he didn't explain a lot of the details to me, but he sounded like this was very unusual. Suddenly a very large wave came, and it filled the boat with water again and knocked the father over. It was apparently a very powerful wave. And when the father pulled his head out of the water, he saw his son right in front of his nose. His son was floating. His head was below the water and bobbing in the water, but his head was below the water, and he could see his son looking right at him. And how his son got to the other side of the boat like this was really miraculous, according to what the father tells us, because the wave had to get him from where he was on the other side of the boat over to where the father was on this side in order for his father to grab him, because he didn't have a life jacket on. So we can learn a few things from this miraculous story. Things like always making sure our tiny toddlers have life jackets on and that we keep them within eye's view. Don't put them somewhere where you can't keep your eye on them, especially if you're at the beach near the ocean, because things like this can happen. God bless you all. I'll talk to you next week.